Hey folks, this is Jake Davis with some old school wrestling for you today. And I said earlier, or last week, that I wanted to get something out this week. Not just talk about classic pay per views, but actually talk about events, rivalries, what have you, and whatnot. So I decided let's go with the rivalries and let's start with something very positive. I definitely want to talk about something that hasn't been covered to death by people. Like everybody's talked about the Montreal screw job and shit like that. I don't want to do that. So I want to talk about the story of Chris Jericho versus The Rock, or more importantly, Chris Jericho's coronation into the main event. Our story, a lot of people will probably tell you that this was destined to happen star-crossed because Jericho made his debut in '99 by interrupting The Rock, but that night, the next night, week, the next month, the next year, they never really built up that there was ever going to be anything to pay off between Jericho and The Rock based on that. No, it wasn't until good over 2 years until after that until they finally clashed heads. And that's what this is. I'm going to tell you about the actual story. Now, keep in mind, this is not a booker mode. This isn't a thing. So if you don't watch these events, please go check out the WWE Network or find what events you can on YouTube or whatever like that, because this is exactly how it unfolded. And it was one of the few times where WWE or pro wrestling in general genuinely did something right, and they kind of nailed it. I mean, was it absolutely perfect? No better way possible to do it? No, probably not. But, I mean, they really did something good here. So, the story actually starts in April of 2000. During a random episode of Monday Night Raw during the McMahon-Helmsley era, which means Triple H and Stephanie were both champions. Stephanie had the women's title, Hunter was the world champion, and they're running Raw and just totally, tyrannical all over the WWF at the time. Chris Jericho comes out. He challenges Hunter to an impromptu title match. Hunter says yay, and Chris beats him, become the new champion. When they come back and seriously, if you haven't seen it, check this moment out particularly, because that's one of the loudest pops you're ever likely to hear. Uh, After they come back from commercial, Triple H is all again tyrannical. He's telling the referee he didn't see nothing. He's telling the fans in the arena they didn't see nothing. The fans at home, you didn't see nothing. Chris Jericho didn't beat me. I'm still the champion. Bring me my belt. And Chris Jericho kind of sheepishly comes out and gives him the belt back, guaranteeing that I will be champion one day. And then he went right back to fighting for the IC title for the next year and a half. So, that moment really sat with the fans as a souring kind of thing. Chris Jericho was a guy we all loved, someone we all supported. And it kind of was starting to feel like this was going to be his one and only time in the sun. This is going to be the closest Chris Jericho ever got to being the champion. Because in WCW, he was basically buried for getting over. He was one of the breakout stars of 1998, and none of the main event guys really wanted to work with him, which was a big part of why he left the company in '99. So we're in the middle, in the heat of the invasion angle, the alliance angle. And yes, this is another heavily covered and heavily criticized era in professional wrestling. Super awful. Will I ever do my Booker mode version of the alliance? Probably not. It's just too much. But who knows? Maybe a Booker mode of one thing in one detail of that angle, like the invasion itself. I don't know. Anyhow, in the heat of this, and the whole thing is at the point of this, at this point in the storyline, Chris Jericho was on a bit of a losing streak. He had been not only just been losing, but getting beat up pretty bad, taking severe injuries. He's getting knocked out by Rhino. He's losing to RVD. He's losing to Stone Cold. And Shane McMahon kind of cuts this promo on him, talking about how, Chris, maybe you just can't win the big one. Which, today, is still this kind of thing they throw on guys. Something you'll be hearing in the next few weeks around with Jimmy Uso and Biggie Langston. Maybe you just can't win the big one. It really kind of all started here with Jericho. So Jericho starts getting a little more aggressive and starts picking up some victories. And on a random episode of SmackDown, he's fighting RVD for the number one contender, and this being a main event match during the Attitude Era. He didn't just win clean. There had to be shenanigans involved. But be that as it may, he is still the number one contender, and the match is set. The Rock defends the WCW Championship against Chris Jericho at No Mercy in October of 2001. Two baby faces fighting for the heel company's world title. Going into this match, to get into his head, Rocky starts talking to Chris, who they've kind of been on and off again tag team partners during the Invasion angle too. That's important to remember. But going to the match, Rocky kind of tells me, maybe it's not that you've been pushed down or held down or haven't had opportunities. Maybe, Chris, you're just not that good. So we get to the match, and it is the best match of the night, one of the best matches of the year. Chris Jericho and The Rock have a 5-star classic. It's tooth and nail. It's touch and go. It's give and take. It's absolutely a great match. Stephanie McMahon runs down to ringside because even though she hates The Rock, she hates Chris Jericho even more, and she doesn't want him to be champion. She tries to throw a chair into the ring to get the match thrown out. The Rock kind of knocks her off the apron. Chris Jericho grabs The Rock, drops him in the breakdown or the skull-crushing finale, whatever you want to call it. Rocky kind of just happens to land on the chair. Jericho says, fuck it, pins him anyways. And Chris Jericho is the new WCW champion. Finally, officially, for the first time in his career, he is a world heavyweight champion. Big ceremony. The Rock is a little pissed off because of the whole chair shot situation, but lets it go. There's bigger things to deal with. The next night on Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon challenges Shane and Stephanie to a company versus company Survivor Series match at the Survivor Series next month. This is going to come into our story, of course. The main event of Raw is the Dudley Boys defending the WWF tag titles against The Rock and Chris Jericho, who are very tentative now after their match last night, even though they've had a pretty decent win-loss record over the last few months during the Invasion angle. They're able to come together, fight as a team, and become the tag team champions. What a big moment. What great momentum for the WWF. Next week on SmackDown, they lose the belts. They lose the belts right away to Booker T and Test. And after the match, The Rock almost childishly attacks Chris Jericho. He attacks Chris Jericho because what caused him the match was Chris Jericho missed a missile dropkick. He was aiming for Test. Test moved. He hit The Rock. Test picked up the victory, this kind of thing. And now The Rock has been Chris Jericho. It's a couple of rock bottoms. And with Survivor Series coming up, McMahon can't have them fighting each other every night. So he tells them they have to settle this in the ring, on Raw, for the title. So here comes the No Mercy rematch. Jericho and The Rock. This is even maybe just as good, if not better, than the match he had at No Mercy. It's really good, but the telltale story here is the dominance of Jericho. He has that confidence now. He knows he can beat The Rock, so he's going into a different man than he was at No Mercy. He puts The Rock through the fucking announce table. He splits The Rock open. He has The Rock in the middle of the ring and the walls of Jericho. He finally, somehow, gets to the ropes. Jericho pulls him back to the ring, goes to put him in the walls of Jericho again. Rocky rolls him up, gets the 3 count. The Rock wins the World Championship back, but can barely get to his feet. He's lost too much blood. He's taken too much of a beating, too much damage to his back from the submission hold. After the match, Jericho totally snaps and beats The Rock down. Beats him down, hits him with the belt, talking shit all the way up the ramp. It's bullshit. It's a lucky win, and it's not right. Now, of course, Chris Jericho is bitter at this point because Rocky gets his rematch going from the Survivor Series, but Jericho has to wait to get his rematch of the title. Hell, they may be out of business. The company's on the line at Survivor Series. I have to wait for my rematch. I might have a job. Might not have a job in 2 weeks, but I have to wait for my rematch. So we get to Survivor Series. And after one of the best Survivor Series matches of all time, it's Team WWF, which is still The Rock and Chris Jericho together, 2-on-1 against the Alliance's last man, Stone Cold. Stone Cold gets a roll-up. He pins and eliminates Chris Jericho, 1-on-1 between The Rock and Stone Cold. But Jericho jumps The Rock, hits him with a breakdown, kicks him a few times, storms out, almost costs the WWF the match. Rocky's able eventually to come back to fight and win the match because of shenanigans. But the point is that the Alliance is gone and Chris Jericho is full-fledged heel. The next night on Raw, Ric Flair is announced as the new co-owner of WWF. He bought Steph and Shane's shares. Vince and Ric Flair come together to come up with an idea to a way to crown one true champion. We got the old WCW belt, with the guy held by The Rock, and the WWF title is still held by Stone Cold. We need one true champion. So we're going to have Rocky versus Jericho and Austin versus Angle, and the two winners of those matches will fight each other the same night, and we'll have one true champion. And this happens at the first ever Vengeance. I'm going to say one thing about this. Just as a critique as a fan, I thought it would have been so much a much smarter play to have named the brand new December pay-per-view Starrcade, because that would have built more intrigue and suspense into who was going to actually win the Survivor Series main event. You know what I mean? Anyhow, because after September 11th, they didn't want any tie-ins to, Armageddon got dropped for a couple of years, and so did Raw's War. They just changed the name of the show to Raw. Anyhow, so we get to Vengeance, and Austin beats Angle in a solid match. And then in one great long stretch of a match. Oh, also, real quick to point out, the same night that this match is set up, there's a handicap match of The Rock and RVD taking on the Dudleys and Jericho, where Jericho pins The Rock with the Rock Bottom. So, we get to Vengeance, and like I said, Austin beats Angle, and Jericho has, what a run, what a one night, probably the greatest night of Chris Jericho's whole fucking career, to be 100% honest with you. Chris Jericho has another great match with The Rock, puts him through the table, there's shenanigans, interference by Vince McMahon, stuff like this, but Chris Jericho beats The Rock again with a Rock Bottom. He stays in the ring, fights Stone Cold, and as you probably know, he wins that match too. Chris Jericho is the undisputed World Heavyweight Champion, the first one in the history of this business. And always on top of the world here. So, we get to New Year's, the first episode of SmackDown of 2002. The Rock's fighting Booker T to decide who's the number one contender, and The Rock wins, punching a ticket for one final opportunity against Chris Jericho at the Royal Rumble. Now, the go-home show on SmackDown, Stone Cold, Triple H, The Undertaker, and Kurt Angle in all different segments go up to The Rock and tell The Rock, after you beat Jericho, and after I win the Royal Rumble, we're going to burn the house down at WrestleMania. And Rock cuts one of his best in-ring promos of all time, talking about, Goldust called me, said he's going to win the Royal Rumble. This jabroni with the camera right here told me he's going to win the Royal Rumble. This kid in the 6th row just told me he's going to win the Royal Rumble. It's a great bit he does. Chris Jericho comes out and is just furious, livid. No humor. Here in this, is just going on. Chris Jericho, I'm the first ever man to be world champion in this business. I'm the man who's had your number for the last 4 months, Rocky. Don't you dare look past me, you son of a bitch. Rocky slowly leaves the ring, never breaking eye contact with Jericho, walks up to the ramp. And Jericho, to his own credit, doesn't fucking back away either. Gets right in Jericho's face and says, Chris Jericho, I did not think you're a joke. And I take you dead serious. So by the time we get to the Royal Rumble, this is the set stage. This is the conclusion of this rivalry. Now, even though The Rock is the biggest star in the company, about to go off to Hollywood and become the biggest man in Hollywood, the fact of the matter is, in the kayfabe world, on paper, he's only beaten Chris Jericho one time, and it is in a match that he could not walk away from. Chris Jericho has broken him, humiliated him, just had, like I said, had his number. So the Royal Rumble match is their longest and most emotional match to date. There's outside interference, there's crooked refs, there's illegal objects. It all comes down to Jericho runs Rocky's face into the exposed turnbuckle, puts his feet in the ropes for good measure, and Chris Jericho beats The Rock for a third and conclusive time. Now, and that's it. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the rivalry. And it is, in my opinion, while it may not be some of the most original or brilliant storytelling in the history of pro wrestling, maybe the wrong guy was the babyface, but the utter selflessness of The Rock. He knew that he only had a few months left as a main eventer. He already had the Mummy Returns had come out. Scorpion King was around the corner, and he was about to leave the business. He used his time here, his last few weeks, this little bit of time remaining, to get someone else to solidify a brand new star. It is, and who more deserving than someone like Chris Jericho? And look at how many times guys have, all that good. All that good grace and professionalism was totally squandered just a few months later when we get to WrestleMania, because the whole WrestleMania main event storyline, instead of revolving around Hunter and Jericho and the title, revolved more around Hunter and Stephanie's divorce. And then he dedicated a whole episode of Raw about custody of their fucking dog. Chris Jericho is the guy that put Triple H on the shelf for the better half of a year. And the story wasn't even about them. You know what I mean? Chris Jericho, the world champion, was a third wheel in his own old WrestleMania main event, which made the title look even less important. And, what The Rock did, however, showed the kind of star that Chris Jericho was. The fact that he was able to hold his own in there with guys like, because during this run, he wasn't just working with The Rock every week. This gave him the exposure to work with guys like Angle and Austin and Taker and Kane and Big Show. And by the end of his title run, he was using his time with the championship to give short little one-night programs to smaller guys, guys he had appreciated over the years, like your Spike Dudleys or whatever. Is what you should do as a champion, especially on your way out and stuff like that. And as I was going to say, you look at how many other guys who had their shot at the main event, shot with the championship, and as soon as they lost it, they seemed to go right back to the mid-card. While the WWE tried to book Chris Jericho right back down to the mid-card as soon as he lost the title, the fans never accepted that, and that's why 19 years later, he is still considered one of the top guys in the industry, if not the top guy in the industry. Anyhow, I hope y'all liked this video. Kind of went on a little longer than I expected to. Anyhow, what y'all think of the Chris Jericho Rock? You think I'm kind of making a bit too much of it, or was it just as good as they said it was? Either way, go back and revisit it. Check it out. It was true star-making stuff there, man. Kind of stuff we don't really get anymore. Anyhow, I'm Jake Davis, and I'll catch you on the fly.